That's a bit like Groundhog Day, isn't it? We played well for 30 minutes, didn't take our chances, and it cost us the game. Glen, Russell Martin promised the side would look different. Were these the changes that we were expecting yesterday?
I think so. I didn't see anyone really disagreeing massively when the team was announced. I think it was probably, well, I think Stevens and Harwood-Bellis was a toss of a coin in my mind. You know, Harwood-Bellis hasn't played well this season. You know, Stevens has probably been better than him. So that was the only one that was a toss of a coin. I was a bit concerned at the start because him and Bednarek has never really worked as a pair whenever we've tried it in the past. But yeah, give that a go. I thought that, you know, the midfield looked balanced, that you had Fernandez in there to give a bit of flair. Big Les and Downs to sort of like add a bit of muscle. Cameron Archer kind of had to start to give us a focal point. Change in formation was obviously something that was needed for that. And yeah, and it was still a surprise to me to see Tyler Diblin start. But you know, we're only saying it's a surprise because of his age. You know, if you just look at ability and the impact that he's had in his substitute appearances and in the Carabao Cup game, then you know, there's no reason at all why he shouldn't start. And Russell Martin said that. So no, you know, Russell Martin said before the game that he had to balance out loyalty to players who did well last year with, you know, the levels that they are now. You know, it is a completely different level of competition, and it's you know, it's a completely different assignment. And this is not really a new thing. Every team that gets promoted has to make these decisions on players that have done previously, you know, very well for them. I mean, just, you know, thinking off the top of my head, when we got promoted in 2012, Billy Sharp and Dean Hammond were two of the, you know, the most important players in that promotion campaign, and they were basically binned off before the season started. They didn't get any time at all, and there's numerous others. Again, off the top of my head, Danny Fox, Richard Chaplow. You know, they just become surplus to requirements very quickly, and that unfortunately is the brutal reality of getting promoted. You go back even. I mean, it's interesting. Adam Armstrong is the one, obviously, because he's very similar to Billy Sharp in lots of ways, in that he's done it in the Championship, but never really shown that he could do it in the Premier League. If you go back, I mean, and he scored probably our second most important goal in history. But you look at the guy who scored the most important goal, Bobby Stokes, the following season, the assignment changed and we were looking to get promoted. And I don't know, many people realise he only actually played about 10 more games for Saints before he was surplus to requirements. So it does happen. So I was quite encouraged by the fact that Russell Martin was prepared to look at those first three games and say that, you know, things need to change. These guys haven't. I've given them, albeit, you know, not a vast amount of games to show what they could do, and they haven't really shown enough yet to warrant leaving these new signings and Tyler Diblin out of the team. So no, I was happy with the way he you know, he went about things. I was pleasantly surprised, I guess, but I did expect him to show the ruthless streak. I briefly heard you guys talking about it last week about the fact that, you know, he did show it at various points last season that he could do that. So yeah, I was pleasantly encouraged. And for the first half an hour, it looked like it was a really good call. But we had issues after that, which I'm sure the other guys will get onto.
What was it, Alfie, about that first half hour that impressed you the most? We've all kind of said how great that was, and we're clinging on to that because I think there's a lot of positives to take from it. But what kind of worked for you?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there was just a renewed energy and enthusiasm, and the players coming in obviously had a point to prove. Someone like Tyler Diblin, for example, I mean, it took 6 minutes for him to sit Diego Dallo down and nearly actually get his first goal, but for a good save from Andre Onana. And I mean, that just sort of lifts the entire team and just gives you that forward impetus. I think that I was a big proponent of the fact I don't think that necessarily the system is the reason why Saints have been bad for the first 3 games, but the change did help, clearly, to start with. I thought it was a good idea to play Leslie Ugochukwu and Flynn Downs in a pivot. It was one more change than I thought he'd make. I thought he'd make 3 changes with the 3, including Tyler Diblin that he brought in. I didn't expect him to drop Joe Aribo for Leslie. But
I was going to say, I didn't see your predicted 11, so I wasn't sure how many of the 11 you got right on that one.
Yeah, but I suppose with that, if you're going to play a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1 as it was, you probably couldn't have Joe Aribo, Flynn Downs, and Matty Fernandez. Leslie offers a bit more control, a bit more protection of the back four. So I suppose in hindsight, it's probably a change that I should have predicted. But I liked that. I thought that for the first 30 minutes, I saw a connection between Ben Brereton, Diaz, and Cameron Archer. They were playing forward passes. They were Cameron Archer particularly taking first touches, trying to flick things around the defenders. I don't think he actually put a pass wrong, Cameron Archer, in the entire game. Problem was he didn't have a pass after the 30th minute because he didn't touch the ball again. So I like the energy. I like that from the start. I thought Aaron Ramsdale kept the side in it again. He's been brilliant. So there's a lot to like about that, but it's just the mentality shift. And I tweeted at the time when the penalty was saved that this can't be a turning point. You know, Man United are going to be rejuvenated now. And, you know, I think it was 2 minutes and 31 seconds, I believe, between the goals. And, you know, from there, they just never looked like they were confident again. Their heads completely went the last 15 minutes, that half, and never really recovered.
We'll get into the bad stuff in a minute, starting with that penalty. Steve, I just want to get your take on that return to the sort of the 4-3-3 and the players that were taken out of the team. What was your take on the whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, even though, I mean, you look at the end result and ultimately that is what it is. But I think that first half an hour, I think, showed that the players were comfortable in that system. And I think going forward, I think realistically, that's going to be our only realistic path to giving ourselves any sort of fighting chance in this division, is to play in that system where we effectively give ourselves 4 attack-minded players, and where you've got the double pivot with Downs and Ugochukwu in front of the back four, that should provide a fair amount of protection. What you've got to be kind of wary of is one or both of those two getting caught the wrong side of the ball. And I think that was the problem in the last kind of 15 minutes or so of that first half, was that we were so eager to get ourselves back into the game at 1-0 down that actually we were kind of going too far, and it was almost like it was the last 5 minutes, and it was, well, it doesn't matter if we get caught on the break in those situations. But yeah, I think that system, as I say, works, especially against a side like United, who will give you space through the middle, because I mean, as much as you look at the way that they've played all season and throughout most of last season, they're a team that any side will always fancy their chances against. At the end of the day, they've still got some very good players, and if they turn up on the day, then we could play our best game and we'd still probably lose. If they're
2000 and when was the last time we beat them at home 1-0? James Beattie scored, didn't it?
Yeah, James beat the 89th minute when I think Alex Ferguson complained that we'd left the grass long, not watered it. All the old tricks you used to be able to get away with that you basically can't now, because the Premier League has standardised everything, and there's like literally down to the fact that the grass has got to be a certain length and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, it's been that long since we've turned them over that even when we were good, like if you think like the Ronald Koeman years, for example, even in those times, we still never managed to beat them, which is very annoying. Obviously, given the, I mean, let's be honest, we all know a chippy United fan, never been to Old Trafford, but has always got something to say when they play Saints.
Yeah,
and yeah, obviously, this week is going to be more of the same, unfortunately.
Yeah, sorry. I'll say it's 15 now winless against Man United, just for the record. 15 games in the league without a win.
Yeah. Tiring, isn't it?
So it's nothing new, but it could have been different, Glenn. A lot was made of the penalty, and was Archer the right man to take it? Hindsight is a wonderful thing, and people were quickly to jump on the stats about how maybe someone else should have taken it. Russell Martin afterwards said, "Well, that's on me. I made him penalty taker because he was here in the international break and he'd been practicing all week." So, do you just feel a bit for him, because if that goes in, then he's off and running, and it's not even a talking point?
I think I mean, the shame is that he didn't just miss the penalty. I think it killed him for the rest of the game as well. He just didn't look the same player after that. I thought he was quite lively in the first half an hour. Bearing in mind he's playing up on his own against Lisandro Martinez and Matthijs de Ligt, who they've probably got 100 caps for their country between them, their respective countries. So it's a tough game against those two, both very good players. And I thought he did well for the first half an hour, but the penalty killed him. He didn't look confident at all. I do not know why on earth it took so long from the penalty being given to the penalty being taken, because it was 100% clear-cut penalty. There was no doubt about it.
So the debate, Glenn, was about whether it was inside the box or outside. It was so clearly inside the box. But
it was so clearly inside the box. It was so clearly a foul. I mean, I can't believe Dalot didn't get booked for it. He was so far from the ball. It's just mad why it took that long to reach that point. And I mean, Brereton Diaz was looking after the ball, wasn't he, doing that thing to make sure no one messed around with it. And then he gave it to Archer, and Archer suddenly, I know he's young anyway, but he looked about 14 taking that penalty. It just looked like he ain't gonna score. It was right in front of where I sit, and quite frankly, it was rubbish. If Onana went the right way, he saves it. It was about, I don't know, 4 foot inside the post. It wasn't very good. And the rebound, he had to try and put that back in the same spot, but couldn't get above it. So it was a simple save. It was a shame. I mean, Brereton Diaz was playing okay up until that point, and he's the one that obviously everyone thought would take it. Alfie was talking about him a couple of weeks ago, saying he would just put his foot through it, and that was obviously what was required. And if we'd gone in, if that had gone in, we probably would have gone in 1-0 at half time, and it would have been totally deserved based on the first half hour, because of the I mean, Ukachuk would put a header over the bar. Well, he shouldered it over the bar. You had Dibling's effort that Onana saved. Walker Peters got to the line, pulled one back, no one there. There was more in terms of attacking play and stretching the opposition defence than I think we've seen in the 3 games combined. So that was, and it just would have been the icing on the cake to have scored. But there's many things that make up a decent team, and scoring when you're on top is one of them, and reacting to setbacks is another one. And unfortunately, we failed on both counts, which is why 10 minutes later we're 2-0 down and the game's gone.
We've had a lot of comments already about Tyler Dibbling. I want to give the 3 of you just a couple of minutes just to talk about him, Alfie. I mean, what a first start. Obviously, we thought it might happen. Lots of talk about him afterwards. It kind of feels like we knew he was a good player, and now everybody else knows that he was a decent player. There's a lot of chat about him yesterday. Yeah,
well, that's very much the nature of obviously the first game back from the international break, 12:30 kickoff on TV against the biggest club in the country. It was a huge stage for him, and I felt looking at him walking out and on the pitch before the game, I thought he looked nervous, which is totally understandable for an 18-year-old kid making their first start. But the second the ball gets going, you don't feel that at all. What was interesting after the match was Russell Martin said that he made his mind up on Tyler Dibbling starting this game. So the second the full-time whistle went at Brentford, he decided that Tyler Dibbling was going to start this game. And I think probably in the back of his head regretted the fact he hadn't started him earlier. But he's just been trying to I suppose, expose him to what is going to be quite a relentless season, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on him, and all these expectations that he'll have to deal with in a staggered way, and just trying to build him up slowly. But I think he sees now that the time is now. You have to unleash him. You have to let him go and play. And he did 64 minutes, and I think that was about as much as he could do. He looked tired by the end, and I think it was the right decision to bring him off. And I would like to see him rested on Tuesday. I don't want him to play any part at Everton. I want him to be fully charged up and ready to start on Saturday against Ipswich. There's nothing more that I can say about Tyler as a player that we don't already all know and agree with, because the way he moves the ball, the determination he has. He's the top dribbler in the Premier League at the moment on statistics. He's actually taken the ball further than any other player, despite the fact he's played about 100 minutes in terms of progressive carries. So, he does all the things that you need him to do, taking the ball from one side of the pitch to the other.
Steve, is it about enjoying a player like that while he's here? Because he's going to attract a lot of interest, isn't he? And that was the kind of my thought about it yesterday. Was like, oh right, okay. So if he's here for a year, then we'll be lucky. Because I think even Paddy Powell were tweeting about how great he was yesterday, and those kind of people jumping on the bandwagon.
Yeah, I think. I mean, it's obviously rare that you get a sort of a talent who looks like he's got the ability to be one of those sort of generational players. And yeah, I mean, I think ultimately all the good players that pass through a club of our size, I always think it's one of those where you do have to kind of cherish them while they're there, because realistically, anybody who is any good is ultimately going to end up playing for a bigger club at some point. You're not going to get the Matt Letizier's of this world anymore, where they're happy to kind of bumble along a little bit at a smaller club, happy to be a big fish in a small pond and be the kind of local hero. Because the money is just the money and the fame and the glory, really, of playing for the bigger clubs and winning the sort of big trophies is what it's there for, and that's what these kids put the hard yards in academy football for, to put themselves in a position where they've got the opportunity to be this sort of superstar name. And I mean, in our minds, obviously he's only just come into the first team, and yet all of a sudden we are so reliant on the kind of trickery and the kind of individualism that he brings to the table. That, I mean, you look down our team. I mean, Adam Lallana, yeah, okay, I think he could probably do the sort of things that Diblin can do, but he's 36, 37 years old now, so he
hasn't got the legs.
Is it that much? He's coming towards the end of his career, and you might see flashes from him occasionally, but you're looking towards the younger players who are going to be starting games and hopefully playing 90 minutes on a regular basis. And he's the guy that is going to be front and center of it all now, I think, which brings challenges of its sort of in itself, because a lot of teams will have done scouting and they'll know, oh, they've got this youngster who's got potential, who might break through at some point this season. We should have some tape on him. But everybody would have seen that first half yesterday, and all of a sudden now, actually our tactical setup is going to be two-pronged now, because obviously I think first and foremost you want to get the ball into his feet as much as possible, but also realistically he's going to be doubled up on a lot. He's going to get the shit kicked out of him a lot. I mean, you look at his shin pads that are barely bigger than a credit card. Those are going to be targets for the rest of the season, but that offers opportunities elsewhere on the pitch, because if they're doubling up on one flank, that means that somewhere else on the pitch there's space for us, and it's about how we use that space. Can we first and foremost make sure that Tyler Diblin doesn't have his legs broken, but then secondary, how can we use the space that his attention is attracting? So yeah, there's opportunities there when you've got someone that good. And yeah, savour him while we can, because let's be honest, I'll give it 2 years tops.
2 years. We'll make some predictions.
Mine. He was the most fouled player yesterday, obviously, and everyone would have been able to guess that.
I'm surprised that it wasn't Bruno Fernandes the way he goes down.
There were a few sort of mumbles of discontent when he went off, Glen, but I think they said afterwards that he was struggling a little bit. So it's going to be about managing him and managing our expectations as well, to a certain extent.
People have very short memories. You've only got to go back to Tino Livramento, Romeo Lavia to see what happens when you play young players week in, week out for 90 minutes, and you become reliant on them too quickly. It's a big change, and the body has to be able to withstand playing, Premier League football. We're talking about the players who got dropped yesterday. who are all a lot older than Tyler Dibbling, and they are struggling to come to terms with the pace of Premier League football. So, yeah, I mean, Dibbling looks to the manner born, but you know, physically, it doesn't matter how good you are if you're that young. I mean, I don't think he's been 18 even that long. Yeah, it's a difficult thing to go from regularly playing academy football to suddenly playing in the Premier League. So it's 60 minutes was enough, especially as the game was. I mean, let's face it, we weren't going to get back into it at that stage. We have, you know, we've signed. So, I mean, that's what I think Russell Martin did with the substitutions. Basically, I think he thought, okay, we need to change the front line. We might get back into it, but I want to get Ross Stewart on the pitch. I want to get Max Cornet on the pitch. Ryan Fraser hasn't played at all, so let's get those on the pitch and see how they, you know, see how they used the last half an hour. And unfortunately, the red card happened before they really had a chance to do anything, and that kind of killed it stone dead regarding us as an attacking force. There was a couple of minutes when Lallana got on the pitch, got on the ball. I thought, oh, we might actually go forward a bit now, but yeah, the red card killed it. But no, I think it was exactly the right thing to take Tyler Dibbling off. Though I would say that the consensus around me was that it wasn't the right thing to do.
Yeah, run him into the ground.
Mike, finally on the Tyler Dibbling angle, I suppose. Just for any listeners, obviously, who have heard the story, maybe it's in the back of their head, I don't quite remember. The fact that obviously he's been at Southampton since he was 7 or 8 years old. He came through the Bath Satellite Academy, but he left for Chelsea I think about 2 years ago now. He left Southampton, went to Chelsea, went there for a month, didn't like it, and asked to come back. And obviously the club took him, and he told me that they took him back because he's not a half bad player, which I think is an understatement. But he was very grateful to be able to come back. But it's an interesting journey. You don't get many players who go to a top 6 club and then decide that actually this isn't for me. I'm going to go back to where I've been for the last sort of decade. How much that sort of has an impact on when the next big club come calling, and it's a slightly different contract, albeit he was on good money. It's a slightly different, 7 figures. Yeah. So who knows what that means? But he has had an interesting journey to this point.
I want to talk to you, Alfie, about the goals as well.
Though, isn't it? It's a great story, though, isn't it? Because, you look at, where's anyone heard from Jimmy J. Morgan? Since he went to Chelsea, Kamari Doyle, anyone heard from him? I know he's Brighton, slightly different. But, I think having that little episode you talked about there in his backstory can only be a good thing for the club going forward. And it will hopefully make him think and not jump at the first offer that comes along.
Let's wait and see, shall we? Alfie, I know the goals were keeping you awake at night. I saw you sort of analysing it about 1 o'clock in the morning, weren't you? Poor goals to concede again. I think we should probably just talk about those and briefly move on, but not great. As you said, after that penalty miss, it was just a couple of minutes and the mood changed and things started to go downhill pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, unbelievably frustrating. Assessing the goals individually, the first ones, obviously, the first two are both second phases from set plays, which is supremely disappointing considering they conceded from a long throw against Brentford as well. But it looks like it's Flynn Downs who's marking Mattis de Ligt, and I think Leslie Ugachukwu was marking Joshua Xerxes, who are the two that end up being free. But there's a moment where obviously Jack Stevens is playing them all on side, and I don't know if they're caught in two minds about playing the offside line or go in, but all it would have taken is one of them to follow, and they'd have been in space to mark it. And then the second one, we're talking about Cameron Archer again. It's the lack of intensity with the press. They just allow Rashford to shoot, basically, and a player that good, you just can't afford that time and space. That being said, it's a great finish. He's the only place he could have put it where it would have gone in. Ramsdale would have got it anywhere else pretty much in the goal. So it's a good goal. And then the third one, right at the end of the game, is more lack of concentration. It's Taylor Howard-Bellis, who's 5 or 6 yards deeper than the rest of the line. No one really knows what's going on. But all three of the goals feel like they're avoidable moments. And I think if you went back and looked at however many goals is it now, is 8 they've conceded, you could probably pinpoint a moment where each of them could have been stopped. But that's the Premier League for you. And they need to work on the defensive organisation. Russell Martin teams have always conceded lots of goals, and that can be fine because the trade-off is that they play good football and they score a lot of goals. Last season it was brilliant fun. Nobody was complaining last season really, apart from in a couple games. So they can sort it out, they can do it, but they are going to concede a lot of goals this season unless they ship up, basically.
Let's talk about the red cards. Steve, red card for Jack Stevens, pretty reckless challenge, to be honest. I think I know what you're going to say, but right decision?
Yes. And I'm surprised there was so much kind of sort of, oh, that's never a red card reaction afterwards, especially like sort of scrolling back through my Twitter feed, seeing the number of people that thought it was a nonsense decision, kind of sort of having had the benefit of replays from about 6 or 7 different angles. Obviously live we only see one angle, and I thought, like, from where I was fairly high up in the northern, it looked to me, well, it's definitely a yellow, and depending on how high he's actually made that challenge, it could easily be a red. And obviously the red comes out, and well, it obviously must be quite high then. And subsequent replays,
I was at the other end, and on first viewing, I thought exactly the same thing.
Yeah,
exactly the same.
But it was one of those situations. Okay, fine, you want to take a yellow for the team because we would have been left short if he'd not made a challenge. But there are ways of doing it, and there are ways of doing it that mean that the worst you're going to get is a yellow card. Going in studs up at knee height is just ridiculous. You know that the likely outcome of this is either you're going to get yourself sent off, or you're basically going to make yourself look an absolute tit by flying in and not getting anywhere near the guy. If you're gonna do one of those sort of take one for the team fouls, then surely I think it's got to be a kind of one of those where you just kind of grab the guy and it's either a shirt pull or almost kind of a sort of tame rugby tackle, if you like. Going in studs up at someone's knee is not the one for me, unfortunately, I'm afraid.
Glenn, same for you. Right decision and straight red.
Yeah. I mean, at first viewing, I thought that could be a red, and I wasn't surprised when the red card came out. It came out very quickly, and to be fair, the referee was spot on. When in real time, I didn't see the initial touch on the knee, on the right knee, I guess it was, as he came through. I saw him hit the ankle of the other foot, and I thought it looked a bit high even there. And then when you see the first replay and you see the first contact is actually on the knee, then there's no argument about it. And it's a shame in a way, because football managers these days, they talk a lot about moments, usually in an attacking context. Defending isn't about moments; it's about consistency. Jack Stevens, Bednarek, Harwood-Bellis, they all had good moments in defence. Jack Stevens put in one absolute blinding tackle on Bruno Fernandes, and bear in mind what a whinnying little twat he is. He actually got up and congratulated him. I couldn't believe it, because it was such a good tackle. But Jack Stevens, you know what you're going to get with him, and you know there's no consistency there, because if he tried to make that tackle a second time, he'd cart him over, or he'd miss altogether. There's no consistency with him at this level. Bednarek was the same, couple of good blocks, but his brain was frazzled by the end of it. You could see that he was tired. His passing went 100% completely went, and Harwood-Bellis is having a difficult time stepping up, and he was only on the pitch for 15 minutes. He, as Alfie said, he was majorly out of position for the third goal. He too got some good blocks in. The only thing I kind of pin my hopes on is that in the context of playing in a back four, Bednarek and Harwood-Bellis were our best. At the start of the 25 game run, those two came together, and they were, that was the one sort of period of the season where the goals against dried up. Now, obviously, this is a completely different level, so it's a bit of a reach to expect us to suddenly get clean sheets or whatever. But I think, we have to find the best combination. That's the other thing. It's about combinations. I said at the start, Bednarek and Stevens. Okay, Russell Martin hasn't seen this firsthand, but we've tried it at various times 2-3 years ago. It never really worked. The two of them just don't really seem to dovetail well as a pairing. So I'm hoping, I assume it'll be Harwood-Bellis who comes in. for these next 3 games. I'm just hoping that him and Bednarek can be more consistent in their play and not have those moments where you look around and just think, oh my God, what on earth was that?
You'd like to think that Jack Stevens would struggle to get back into the sides, and we're in that kind of situation. But I mean, that might be wishful thinking. Go on, Steve.
Do we think that we might see another of our double-barreled centre backs so suddenly kind of re-emerge? Obviously, we saw Bella Kotchap feature for 20 minutes or so at Cardiff in the last round of the Carabao. Any chance that he starts Tuesday night at Everton?
I think it would be a sensible decision if he does.
That ship sailed, do you think?
No, I don't. I mean, I don't know what it's like. At the end of the day, we're not privy to the private conversations they've had. But ultimately, if he wants to play, if he's happy to play, and I think Russell Martin should be willing to give him a chance. And Tuesday night in the Cup, where it doesn't really matter, is the perfect way to do it. It's still Premier League opposition. Come back in, start the game, play alongside Nathan Wood, I imagine, and give him a chance. So I guess we'll have to see. I'll be a little bit disappointed if he is on the bench behind Ronnie Edwards or behind Nathan Wood on Tuesday, just because we know that those two are probably not going to play at the Premier League level this season, or certainly not right away, and that's fine because they're young players. But with Amo-Ameyaw, we've seen that he can do it at this level if he can be in the right frame of mind and physically fit, which hopefully he is now after having surgery. So yeah, I agree with Steve. I don't necessarily think he's going to be the Lord and Saviour of everything, but you've got to give him a chance.
When did the foreign transfer windows all shut? Like Saudi and Turkey and stuff like that, because that may have a bearing on it as well. I mean, they played him against Cardiff. They played him against Cardiff. I assumed to show everybody that he could still play,
and he was fit.
And he was fit. So if all the transfer windows are closed and he's definitely going to be here until January at least, then I'd totally agree. You've got to give him a chance to play. Especially as things aren't going particularly well in the defence at the moment. I don't think he's the answer, to be honest. I know a lot of people have been clinging to the hope. He's got the best pedigree out of all of our centre backs, being a full German international and all that. But to me, there's something not quite right between the ears with that guy. And he's been a Saints player for 2 and a bit years now, and he's never really looked particularly committed to the club. So. Yeah, I'm not expecting him to be the saviour, I have to say.
Okay. Well, we'll get on and preview that Everton game in just a moment. I want to do Player of the Week as well. I think we've got our first name on the sheet for that already. Anything else on Manchester United? Anything on the subs and Ross Stewart coming in? Anything on the starter player? We kind of covered that all, I guess.
Aaron Ramsdale
looked interested. I thought he was fairly lively. Couple of nice little layoffs. Lovely little sort of interplay between him, Downs, I think it was, and Cornet. I mean, Cornet. I think I'm already kind of pinpointing him as one of those runs fast, gets into good positions, and then final ball is a little bit hit and miss.
We've had a few of those over the years.
Yes, I'm hoping that we can kind of just get one of those little spells out of him, like when he was at Burnley, where kind of more of what he tried came off than didn't. And if you can just get a little run of games out of him where that happens, then I think he's going to be very useful, because he's kind of one of these players that actually we don't really have another similar type of player. I mean, people will say Sulemana, but let's be honest, the guy wasn't getting a game in the Championship. So Cornet is a relatively proven quantity at this level, and we don't have many of them. So I think he's going to be quite important. Wouldn't be surprised to see him start Tuesday night, just because obviously he's not played much football. Get him kind of up to speed and able to start if that's the route we want to go down. It may well be that there's a future starting position either side of a central striker. And yeah, it'd be nice to have a few different options that we can go between, because I mean, going back to our earlier conversation, obviously we've seen in not too distant past where we've flogged these young talents to death, and they've ended up with long-term injuries, and we then can't call upon them. So I think, yeah, Tyler Dibling's minutes have still got to be managed, and that means that we need people who can play in that position too.
Sure.
So yeah, hopefully Cornet's the guy there. Fraser, I suspect, will be slightly more sparingly, just because of his little bit of his age, his stature. But we'll see.
A good option.
Yeah, having options is better than not having options.
And Glenn, I guess Aaron Ramsdale, you saved some important saves, and
Yeah.
it's been a tough start, hasn't it? Conceding 6 goals in 2 games, but
yeah, six goals, none of which have been his fault, and he must be wondering about his life.
What
choices.
have I done?
Yeah, I think there must have been an element of that, and it was noticeable at the end of the game that he was the first player that Russell Martin went to. So I think with Ramsdale, he really seems to care. Maybe I'm reading too much into that. You know, you hope all players care, but he seems to be one that takes it quite hard when we get beat. I mean, he's been playing for Arsenal for 2 years in and around their squad, so obviously they don't get beat off, and all of a sudden he's having to get used to, you know, letting in 3 goals a game when he's basically had a good game. Yeah, and that's I imagine can be very disheartening. But you know, again, I heard you guys talking last week about he's an amazing signing for us, and he is a, you know, regardless of what Arsenal fans will tell you on Twitter, he is a very good goalkeeper, and for me, he's an absolute shoe-in for our Player of the Year already. I can just see this coming. He's just going to be so busy, and there's going to be games that he wins for us, hopefully, and games where he keeps the score down. So I just hope he can keep his chin up, and you know, put the bad games, you know, or the bad experiences out of the way, because it must have been quite disheartening yesterday to have played as well as he did and still let in 3 goals. But no, I thought he was tremendous, and yeah, long may it continue.
Let's do TSP Player of the Week. If you're watching along live, let us know who impressed you. Tyler Dibbling took Player of the Week last time out, for the 2nd time already this season. I think there's a trend developing here already. Steve, we've been waxing lyrical about him. A few others as well. Who are we going to put into the poll?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously Dibbling's going to be first name in there. I'll happily throw Ramsdale in there as well. As Glenn rightly says, he's not been at fault for any of the 6 goals he's had to pick out the back of the net, but there's just a presence there in defence, sort of behind the defence, and I think over time, I think that will kind of increase the confidence levels. I mean, the end of the day, he's been in the door 2.5 weeks, so he's not going to have that sort of working relationship with the defenders in front of him from day one. That takes time, but I think you can already see that there is more confidence in him than there ever was in Alex McCarthy. That's no slight on Alex McCarthy. That's just
fact.
It's just facts. It's just levels. McCarthy is a keeper that, I mean, at the end of the day, if he'd started last season, we'd have probably been more or less in a similar position, I think. Maybe slightly fewer goals scored, because I think we wouldn't have been able to be quite so fluid in terms of playing it out. But he's kind of fine. But I think Ramsdale is a level sort of way above kind of any goalkeeper we've had for a while, actually. Like, even, I mean, I'd say probably on a par with kind of peak Forster, sort of pre-knee injury. And yeah, now all we have to do is get a defence and a midfield worthy of its name in front of him to give him a fighting chance.
All right, so we'll put Dibbling, we'll put Ramsdale. Alfie, anybody else you want to add?
Yeah, I'll just add Yuki Sugawara. I think he linked up well with Tyler Dibbling. He put the ball in that Glenn mentioned for Leslie, which could have been a goal. Yeah, but they're probably the only 3 that I think we should nominate this week, unless Glenn has someone different in mind.
And Glenn, we'll put Aaron Ramsdale down for you, shall we?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say Sugawara as well. So yeah, I think those 3 are the ones worth mentioning.
There's the three, right?